So the reason I even say this, and I wish there were a lot more non-native people in the audience, really wish there were, but I'm happy for those who are here, is that it's important to dialogue, between ourselves, and it's important to dialogue, it's important to know the history, it's important to acknowledge the history if we're going to be here. I think sometimes as non-natives we get a little defensive. Here we are out in the middle of wherever and living with a different culture, and it can be hard, for us too. It's important to see the story from the native point of view, in my opinion. So I just wanted to say that as a person from counseling services, we will do the best we can. And I'm here again, and like I said, I've heard Dr. Duran give his talk lots of times, although it's, there's always new things, and I'm still thinking, wow, I have to remember that, and I have to remember this. I have to learn these things and try to, incorporate them in my work. And the last comment I want to make is that I have with me Mr. Val Lopez, who is the tribal chairperson of a tribe in California, the Mamutsan tribe. And Mr. Lopez and I do a lot of work together on historical trauma in California. He's from a mission Indian tribe, which means that the missionaries basically took the Indians into the missions, and I think 19,000 of your tribe died in 30 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so Val and I do a lot of work, and recently we went to talk to a Buddhist monk in California, and I think what it boiled down to was the Buddhist monk said the most important thing is dialogue. One of the most important things is dialogue, people talking together, which is why I got up to give this little bit. Talking, the non-natives talking to the natives. It's very important. It's very hard sometimes to do that, but it's important.
Yes, sir.
I have limited dealings with our medicine men, and always it seems like the term that they use is "dinain ila," or they say, "This is what's bothering you." It's just like what you pointed out. Instead of them saying you're diabetic, he'll say that this is what's bothering you. The sugar is bothering you. Probably is what the term you probably would use. But we need to find out what's underneath of that, and then and address that one, and then you'll heal on top of that. Your symptoms will go away. And I just wanted to make that comment, and you're right. You see a lot of the psychologists tell you that you're schizophrenic, or you're this, and you're labeling, and they're giving you the name, and it's stuck with you, And I think that's a good the part of the healing part of it that I think needs to be probably people need to realize, and I think a lot of the elderly Navajos already know that, and there it is. They should have said oat then when you were asking for it. So there's the oat right there.
Hi, I'm one of these non-native Belgicanas, and I'm a certified diabetes educator, so I appreciate when you bring up the conversation about diabetes. I've had type 1 diabetes now for 38 years, and as I try to tell the individuals that I work with is that, and I never say, you're not diabetic, you have diabetes, you're a mother, you're a father, you're a sister or whatnot, and so I think when and I guess I'm asking, is that what you see as maybe the way of approaching it, is that, we're not labeling them, but at the same time addressing what we need to deal with.
When I ask for comments and questions, I should have prefaced by saying I only want easy questions, and that's a hard question. But no, it's a very valid, and I'm glad you brought it up, because my understanding, again, through the natural law, and it doesn't matter what tribe or what color you are, the natural law applies. And what I suggest to people, I don't tell them to do anything, because to tell somebody to do something doesn't work. And so, I don't want to continue the definition of insanity. And so I suggest that what they do is they make a relationship with this thing called type 1 diabetes or whatever it's called. And the way to do that is just like we make a relationship here in the human realm. And if you live here, then you have a fine example of how to do that, because the Dene people really have that down to a fine art. You know, when they identify themselves, I mean, you know which mountain, you know, which clan, all of that. And so I suggest to people that they approach the spirit of diabetes and identify themselves to it. They say, this is my name, this is my mother, my father, my grandpa, grandma, all, as far as you can go. And then ask it, who are you? And who sent you? And then give it a gift. And the natural law says that it cannot not talk back to you. So in some way it'll respond, whether it's in a dream, or it'll just talk to you, or you'll get an insight, and it'll tell you what it's there to teach you. Because there's a reason. You said you've had it for 38 years or something like that. Well, I wonder what it's trying to tell you. See, and if nothing else, that's weird enough to be interesting, because then people are like, I wonder what it is trying to tell me. Because just to have the other diagnostic stuff, and it's good to eat the right foods and exercise and take the medicine and all that, but it's also really important to understand what it is that it's bringing. And that applies to any of the so-called sicknesses. I mean, whether it's cancer or whatnot, to see what it's in, and then you can negotiate with it. I had a friend who was diagnosed with cancer, and he called me, and I says, well, he happens to be a priest, and I says, well, bro, I think what you need to do is you need to talk to the spirit of cancer and see what it wants from you, and give it a gift, because I don't know what it's trying to tell you, and it'll tell you. And so he called me a few days later, and he says, I talked to it, and it said it wants my life. I says, oh, okay. I says, well, maybe you can negotiate. You know, you can try. You can say, well, instead of my life, I'll give you something else. And so he started a negotiating process, and the cancer said, okay, I'll take that instead. And so then, you know, he went through some treatments, and he's okay. But see, even if you had gone to the treatments and been okay and hadn't done that, it wouldn't have that profound meaning that it has for him now. Because now, and he calls it, and this is how he refers to it, he says, brother cancer, he says, taught me a lot. And that's how he talks about it. He doesn't talk about it as a sickness. And so sister diabetes or brother diabetes is teaching you a lot. And so I say to people, don't waste it, because it's already been teaching you for 38 years. So I say, you have a lot of catching up to do, lady, because it's probably going to tell you all kinds of stuff. And then it might just let you go, and then you'll say, geez, you know, I miss it. And sometimes people tell me that. I was working with a young girl who the spirit of suicide had been manifesting to her. It would actually come into her room, and she would actually see it and hear it. And she'd been in and out of the hospital a lot because of, you know, every time she'd attempt, and very serious attempts. And, you know, they put her on medicine, and they'd go back home, and she would try it again. And so out of desperation, somebody says, well, go talk to that Ed guy, because he says weird things. And so, you know, the young girl came in, and she's, you know, the skinny, you know, little Indian girl, and she's sitting there and doesn't know. And so I just asked her in the first few minutes, I said, well, has the spirit of suicide ever said anything to you? And she immediately sat up and smiled, and she says, I want to talk to you more. Because ever since she was a little girl, the spirit of suicide has been appearing to her in her bedroom and laughing at her. And I says, well, what are we going to do about that? And if it's showing up, apparently it doesn't want to hurt you, because if it's been showing up since you were 5 years old and you're still here, that means if I wanted to hurt you, it would have hurt you. So what you need to do is identify yourself to it and give it a gift and ask it what it wants. And I said, by the way, ask him or her for his name. And so she did, and the next week she came in, and she had a name. This being told her his name. It happened to be a man's name. And so now she started relating to it, and a few weeks into it, she told me, she says, now it doesn't bother me anymore. And I says, well, I was trying to show you something still. And when I show you something, she says, does that mean it's going to leave then? I says, it might. I says, you don't want it to leave, do you? And she says, no. Because now she had a relationship with it. See, and it completely transformed it into something else.